Question. For the sake of the development of the I Am Presence, has the I Am Presence created the world in order to experience itself? Is the, so to speak, matrix I find myself in an illusion? Is everything that happens to me an aspect of my inner world inducing it upon me? As an example, if someone hits me, according to this theory, it is me who is hitting myself. And where I find myself in, for example, lying in a room on the bed, the walls and the bed and everything around me is in fact an aspect of myself creating it. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's a very cute theory. And that's all it is. I understand that there are spiritual teachers, non-dual teachers who are saying the world is only a dream. It doesn't actually exist. There is no world out there. And it's a really good example of how you can get yourself into a blind alley with the mind. That the mind can, so in other words, the mind can think itself into a blind alley that the mind can't think its way out of. It's when you start reasoning this way, and it goes back to, as I've said in many of my non-duality videos, this Eastern attitude. Only Brahman is real, the world is an illusion. So you are then saying the entire world is an illusion. And that can lead you then to reason that you, yourself, whether it's your higher self or your mind, has created the entire world that you experience. Just so that you can either have the experience or grow. Some of these non-dual teachers, they're even talking about growth because they're saying that even the self is not real. So there is no growth. You just need to awaken from the dream. Okay, so let's just look at this. I know this is trying to use logic. It probably isn't going to work for some people, but if your mind, has created the world, where did I come from? According to this theory, you have created me. I don't exist. But wait a minute now. I'm a conscious being. And I could just as well say, hey, but you sent me this question. But this is me that's sending me this question. So in other words, are you a figment of my imagination, or am I a figment of your imagination? So if you just play a little bit with that thought, you realize that, yeah, right? The logical mind doesn't know what to do with it. Because if you look at it from a different perspective, you can resolve the seeming paradox. Instead of asking, has my mind created the world? You can ask a more constructive question. How much of my inner experience is created by my own mind? That's really the question to ask here. So this opens up for something that, in my view, it gives you a way out of this quagmire. Because if you think about it again, if your mind has created the world and you are suffering, how are you going to get out of your suffering? If it's all created in your mind, how are you going to get out of it? Your mind, you're saying, the person is saying, has the I Am Presence created the world in order to experience itself? What are you then? You're the one asking the question. What are you? Where did you come from? some of these non-dual teachers will say, oh, you're part of the dream, you don't exist. What I'm saying in all of my videos is there is a part of your mind that isn't real, that has created illusions. But there is a part of your mind that's real. And the reason why I'm saying this is that, look at the question. Is the so to speak matrix I find myself in an illusion? What's your foundation for asking that question? If you, the self that you are, is a complete illusion, how would that illusory self ever come to question whether everything is an illusion? How can an illusion question an illusion? So that's why I'm saying, when you really step back, and as I've said before, you can very simply become aware that you're sitting here watching this video instead of focusing all your attention on. Step back mentally, realize, oh, I'm sitting here watching a video. That step is self-awareness. And that shows you there is something in you, there's a part of you that's real. And this is what I explained in my video about how the world was created and many other videos. You have a spiritual self that is real. It exists in a higher realm, a realm of higher vibrations. That spiritual self sent an extension of itself into embodiment on a planet called Earth. And that extension is what I call the conscious you. It is your ability to become conscious of yourself and your situation. It's your ability to mentally step back, so instead of being immersed in your situation, you'll begin to ask questions about what is real and unreal. So now what you can do is you can start looking at your own mind. And as I've explained in many videos, there's a part of our minds that is created when the conscious you stepped into the illusion that it's a separate being. And it used the duality consciousness to create illusions. Now, here is where you can then avoid another quagmire. What many of these non-dual teachers are saying is, everything you experience is a dream. That means there's nothing real. Nothing is real. Okay? If you really go into this, you are this close to a straitjacket. And you can see people who have been in this non-duality movement for years and who are now beginning to seriously question and admit that they were really seriously disturbed and hurt by it. Because it leads into nihilism, it leads into depression, it leads into nothing matters, it leads basically into mental illness. If you keep going with nothing is real. But what I'm saying, and what the Ascended Masters are saying is, you don't have to go into that blind alley. You can realize there is something that's real. It's not that what your mind has created in duality is all illusions. There still is a world out there. There is a planet called Earth that your mind did not create. And that planet is home to 8 billion other minds, other individual minds besides yours. And collectively, we have created certain conditions, even physical conditions on this earth, but we also created certain thought systems, belief systems, certain worldviews. And the planet itself is real, but all of these thought systems that we have created based on duality, the duality consciousness, they are unreal. So now what you can realize is that you're looking at the world. There is an actual world out there. But you may not be seeing the world as it is, because in your mind, in what I call the identity mind, the mental mind, the emotional mind, and even the physical aspect of the mind, you have all these perception filters. And they are based on the illusion that you're a separate being, and therefore they distort the way you look at the world and the way you interpret what you see. So, is the, so to speak, matrix I find myself in an illusion? Well, there is a real world outside your mind. But the matrix is inside your mind. And yes, that is an illusion. Now, this doesn't mean that awakening from this illusion means that the world disappears or that nothing matters. No. It means that you overcome the illusion of separation, the illusion of duality, and this basic illusion is that your mind can define how the world works. You think about some of these non-dual teachers, right? They are saying, oh, everything we experience is just a dream. What's that based on? Some process in their minds. They are still, even though they claim to be awakened or liberated, they are still with their minds thinking they can define how the world is. Because they think they can define, oh, the world is just an illusion. It's just a dream. You can have these non-dual teachers who say, if you are asleep in London, but you are dreaming that you are walking in the streets in Paris, the streets in Paris in your dream seem very real to you. But you are not in Paris. So it's just an illusion. But you see, there is a real world. There is Paris does exist. You might be dreaming about it, but it's still there. What you are seeing is a dream image of the streets of Paris. But you could get on a train from London to Paris, and in a few hours you'd be actually physically walking in the streets of Paris. So you can check the dream in your mind against something that isn't created by your mind. And if you're not doing that, if you're thinking that your mind can define that the world is a dream, you are still trapped in thinking that your mind can define reality, and that's the central illusion of the duality consciousness and separation. So when you start realizing here what the Ascended Masters are teaching about how the world was actually created by beings at a higher level of consciousness than us, the option you now have is, as I said, you can start seeing yourself as a connected being, where you realize your mind is not able to define reality. That's the illusion you have in duality. That's the dream, that's the matrix. That the mind can define reality or define reality as a dream. That the world is a dream, but it's still the mind defining it. So the alternative to this is that you can now start connecting to a reality that is outside your mind, that wasn't created by your mind. Now, as the questioner says, talks about the I Am Presence. Has the I Am Presence created the world? No. The I Am Presence sees itself as part of the greater world created by beings who have a higher level of consciousness than the I Am Presence. The I Am Presence is not ascended. The I Am Presence knows it's not a complete being. It sees itself as a co-creator who's relating to a world created by greater minds. And that's what you can start doing when you start realizing what the spiritual path is all about. You can start connecting to minds that are greater than yours. And that is what many of these non-dual teachers have not done. They have not been willing to do it because they don't want to acknowledge, I assume, that their mind's greater than theirs. They think their minds are so great that they can define that the world is just a dream. So, as I said, thinking that you have created the world, your mind has created the world, is just a quagmire. It's a bottomless pit, quicksand. The more you struggle, the deeper you sink. If someone hits me, according to this theory, it is me who is hitting myself. Yeah. So why are you hitting yourself? Maybe you want to experience something, but if it's yourself that's doing it to yourself, why couldn't you just produce the experience directly? Why do you need to go into this illusion that there's someone else hitting you? maybe the reality is that there is someone else, because most human beings on earth, as I said, are trapped in duality and separation. They only learn from the school of hard knocks. And they are giving each other the hard knocks by not living up to each other's expectations. Where I find myself in, for example, lying in a room on the bed, the walls and the bed and everything around me is in fact an aspect of myself creating it. Why? Why are you creating something if it's you who's creating everything? Right? Why are you creating something that seems like it's not you? Because you think about it, as the person says. There's an I am presence in the spiritual realm that has created the world so it can experience something. But if the I am presence has created the world, then it knows it's created the world. So what's the experience? Who is the you that's asking this question, that's thinking there's an I am presence who has created the world that I experience? Must be different from, as I said, an extension of the I am presence. What is the purpose? Well, the purpose is that the conscious you, who is not aware that it's the I am presence, has an experience. Right? So that the conscious you can grow and so that the I am presence can grow. But this is an experience, let's put it this way. As I've explained in how the world was created, we live in an unascended sphere that isn't permanent. And the purpose of this entire sphere, in this entire world of form, is to give experiences to the I am presence and the conscious you of all of us. And we have an experience partly by the I am presence observing the world from the spiritual realm, and partly by the conscious you going into the world and experiencing the world from the inside. So you could say that it's a dual experience where the I am presence is experiencing the world from the outside and the conscious you is experiencing the world from the inside. And that's what gives us the complete experience. But the I am presence is very consciously aware that it's relating to a world that it didn't create, that were created by bigger minds. The conscious you, once it goes into duality, it can create all kinds of illusions that seem real to the conscious you when it's inside these separate selves. So I understand that there are non-dual teachers, non-dual students who have come to believe in this, the world is a dream, and it seems very real to them. But it is just an experience created in the mind. And that means that these people have not locked in to the basic switch you make on the spiritual path, which is to realize that your mind is not a complete system. Your mind cannot define reality, it can discover reality by connecting to greater minds outside itself. It's the only way it can work, because our world was created by greater minds. And once we have gone into duality and illusion, the only way out of duality is to reconnect to these greater minds. We are allowed by free will to go into this illusion and create a dream state. But we're not creating a world. We're just creating something in our own minds, a perception in our minds, concepts in our minds. And that's the dream, that's the matrix. What we have created out of separation and duality, that is the dream. And we need to awaken from that dream, and we can. But we only awaken, once we are inside the dream, we only awaken from the dream by connecting to greater minds outside our own minds. It's just the only way it can work when you grasp how the world was created.